Hello everybody, this is Fyrirmaster Ingvar Johannesson from Iceland, and yes, this is me, this is my ugly mug. This picture was taken about 2 weeks ago when I was playing in the Icelandic League, and this game is indeed analyzed in the Master Hangout. It was the Benoni game against Arnason. A very nice game, but that's not what this video is about. This is my submission to the video contest, and this video is about patterns and pattern recognition. And well, this is sort of an introduction and first in a series. I'm gonna basically teach and show and collect patterns, and this is how I intend to categorize them. It will be made patterns, tactical patterns, strategical patterns, technique patterns, and endgame patterns, although I don't have any endgame patterns in this video. So, on we go. Our first pattern, that's a mate pattern, and it's called Anastasia mate. Onto the chessboard, and this is sort of to demonstrate the mate in its purest form. And in this mate, these three pieces will cooperate to form the mate. First we go knight e7 check. The king has only one square, and of course after this check we notice that the knight is blocking this square as well as this one, and indeed we follow up with queen takes h7 check. This has to be captured, and rook h5 is checkmate. So this is Anastasia's mate. I have no idea why it's called that, but generally it's just called that, and I think it's nice to have a name to associate with these patterns, to refer to them in the future. Let's go on. I have another example. No, don't want to save. Well, this is an opening theory. A Spanish game. Knight takes e4, rook e1, knight c5. Black takes the opportunity to capture the bishop. We take on e5. Main line is take on c3, but if we take on e5, but if we take on c3, knight takes c6 check, bishop e7, knight takes e7, a very nice move, and if he takes the queen, check. He has to interpose the queen, and then we take with the knight. And this is winning for white. The material is equal, but there's no way out for this knight. And we're also threatening a discover check here and here as well. So, okay, just going off topic a little bit. Okay, but on we go. Rook takes e5 check, bishop e7. Black is a piece up for the moment, but after knight d5 it's clear that we will recover the piece. Seems logical to castle here, but what happens now? Knight takes e7 check, king h8, queen h5, and well, after seeing the mate pattern in its original and clear form, we know what white is threatening, but after the logical move d6, black fell for it anyway. Queen takes h7, king takes h7, rook h5, checkmate. And this is surprisingly common, and I'll be the first one to admit that about 7 years ago on ICC I was playing black in a similar line, and my opponent blitzed this out, beat me, mated me, and then I got the message theory. So it was not a comfortable feeling to lose like that, but I've gotten people back with a similar line without a6, but comes to the same. One more thing I'd like to add, well, nothing, it's not related to the pattern, but after g6, queen h6, g6 still doesn't work because we have rook h5. The mate on h7 can't be defended unless by g takes h5, and we have queen f6 mate. Okay. And one more example. Here it's black to move, and this is from a game between Andrenko and Kalininia. Both rated around 2100, and white's last move was queen to c5, and white overlooked the simple threat of Anastasia's mate by rook e2 check, king h1 takes, and checkmate. So this was Anastasia's mate, and I'm sure that after watching this that you will notice it next time. Well, on we go. It's mate pattern number 2, and I call that Bowden's mate. Let's have a look at that. This is from a game. Bowden was an old master, so this game is about from about 1895 or something like that. And Bowden played d5. This is the first known example in database, I believe, of this mate. And, well, white has to lose a piece here, but he didn't notice black's threat, and he took on d5. And maybe you've seen this before, but if you haven't, then after this you will have surely learned it. The main idea of this theme is that white's king is very much boxed in by his own pieces here. The rook and the knight take care of this side of the king, and this bishop is blocking the king here. So after the simple queen takes c3 check, b takes c3 is absolutely forced, and then we have bishop a3, and this is checkmate. And it's really nice how only the bishops coordinate to make this mate. Here we have another game. Black's last move was queen to h5, offering up the exchange of queens. But of course, white denied to exchange queens because, yes, of course, by now you should know, queen takes c6 check, e takes c6, bishop a6, checkmate. I have some further examples here. This is a game between, actually from a simul, between Alexander Alekhine and some guy named Vasic in 1931. And let's just go over this quickly. It's a weird kind of French defense by black. Well, and white as well actually, but after that gf6, bishop d3, black played here b6. Now this isn't exactly like the position with king is on c8, but it's sort of mirrored. We still have this these black pieces blocking. We still have this bishop on the diagonal, and well, you must have noticed by now, queen takes e6 check. Of course, queen e7 we take with mate, but f takes e6 doesn't bring much salvation because we have bishop g6 checkmate. One more example, and this is from a game between Jonathan Rawson, who is now a grandmaster, and a guy named Richardson, and his rating is actually 2360. But here he played c takes d4. His idea was, well, quite obviously, if white recaptures, he's going to play queen takes c4 check. But my friend Jonathan, he didn't recapture on d4. He of course took on e6, recognizing the opponent's mate. Bishop g6 checkmate. Okay, I think this is quite clear. So those were my two first mate patterns. Okay, I think I have one more. Yes, it's mate pattern number 3, and I call that Stefansson's mate. Hannes Stefansson is an Icelandic grandmaster, and we'll see an example from his game. Okay, I'm not going to say this. Okay, this is the mate in its pure form. Well, as you can see, we have very active pieces. The bishops are very active here. The knight is well placed, and the queen is ready. And indeed, the queen sacrifices itself. Queen takes h5, threatening queen takes h7 mate, and after g takes h5, bishop takes h7 checkmate. Let's look at one example from a tournament game. This is between two amateurs. But White's last move was actually knight from g7, capturing a pawn on h5. Quite probably overlooking queen takes h5. Now there's nothing to be done about the threat of queen h7 mate, but to take this queen. But unfortunately, that allows the Stefansson mate bishop h7. And on we go. One more example, and indeed that's from the game Stefansson Brousson from the Capablanca Memorial. And well, I had seen this mate, of course, before in textbooks, but this was the first time I kind of saw a game between very strong players where this happened or occurred. And well, it's Stefansson to move here, and if you want to play queen takes h5 here, then you're paying some attention, but not enough, because we also have to take into account that we have an opponent in chess, and our opponent can checkmate us here. So what did Hannes Stefansson do here? Yes, of course, he played bishop to e4, attacking the queen, stopping the mate on g2, and after Black's forced reply, either queen c8 or even if he plays d5, then we can go ahead with queen takes h5. We are threatening simply queen h7 mate, and well, Brousson resigned here, but of course if he captures the queen, then bishop takes h7 is checkmate. So yes, those were our mate patterns for this edition of my pattern recognition program. It's on to our first tactical pattern, and I call that the undefended bishop on b7 in hedgehog positions. This often occurs in the hedgehog, sometimes in the Sicilian. You can get hedgehog-like pawn structures in the Sicilian. But the example I've chosen here is from a game. This is a common way to try to reach the hedgehog for white. e4, intending d4, takes, knight takes. And now we have the hedgehog. Usually black goes a6, knight b2 d7. But he has to be a little bit careful, because after knight b2 d7, which is indeed a mistake, white has a tactical blow here. And have you seen it? White can play here e5. The point, of course, is that if bishop takes g2, e takes f6, material is equal, but the difference is that We are threatening to capture 2 black pieces. So if black would choose this, he would lose a piece. So the best that black can do after this is d takes e5, bishop takes b7, and take on d4. Notice that rook b8, we have knight to c6, which still should win the exchange. So probably this is the best that black can do. D takes c3, and we are up the exchange. Although black has a pawn for it, white has a winning position. Notice in this example after e5 the importance of the presence of the rook on e1, and I will demonstrate it in our next example, which is very similar but not exactly the same. Here white plays e5 immediately. Bishop takes g2, e takes f6, and now, like before, there are 2 black pieces attacked, but this time he's attacking the rook on f1. But notice that in our earlier example the rook was on e1. So what happens here after bishop takes f1? We take, black has to recapture, and king takes f1. And in this instance we have 2 pieces for the rook and the pawn, and usually we prefer the 2 pieces for the rook and the pawn, and in this instance that's good for white. But again, no difference, and the importance of having the rook on e1 instead of f1. Okay, here we have a game I played in the Icelandic League last year. Once again, it was a Catalan, a weird kind of Catalan actually. And here I found a forcing continuation. I played e4. He has to retreat the knight. I notice already when I play e4, I have spotted the combination, and it's based on this unguarded bishop on b7, and the similarities to the hedgehog were probably what allowed me to find this combination. And here I played not knight takes f7 but knight to g6, and the importance is that I am intending e5, of course, exploiting the bishop on b7, and after h takes g6, e5, queen takes d4, I take on f6. I'm attacking 2 pieces, the bishop on b7 and the bishop on d6, and the best that black can do here is bishop takes g2. Now I take on e7. If I had originally taken on f7, the black rook would be there now, so this pawn takes e7 wouldn't come with a tempo gain, because after bishop takes f1 I take on f8, and I have simply won a piece, haven't I? Okay, I just remembered one extra example. I'm just looking it up here. Here it is. Okay, let's just go to the Catalan castles. Is after b6 here. Knight c3, bishop e7, knight e5, c6, e4. If black goes here, knight b to d7, then we have a very interesting tactic, and the theme essentially is the same, but it's slightly different. Knight takes c6, a very nice move. Bishop takes c6. We have to take with the e-pawn to open this diagonal. Okay, black takes, doesn't really matter if he takes, but comes to the same. Bishop has to retreat, and now we go d6, exploiting the undefended bishop on b7. And indeed, after this, d takes e7. With a tempo gain, black has to take, and king takes g2. And white is basically up a pawn for nothing. Let's save this little nugget here. Okay, I think that was the last example, so on we go. And I have a strategical pattern for you, and I call it Glikoric's pawn sacrifice. And let's have a look at that. This is a famous game between Alexander Kotov and Svetozar Gligoric, and this is from the Candidates Tournament in Zurich in 1953. A very famous tournament that David Bronstein actually wrote a famous book about, that people consider to be very good. Just gonna go quickly over the opening here. Queen c2, and in this position, this was probably pretty much groundbreaking because people hadn't done this before. Here Gligoric played e4, and what's the idea behind this move? The idea is after f takes e4, we go f4. We just gave up a pawn, but for what? First of all, for this wonderful e5 square, which is firmly under control, and for instance we can put a knight there. Second of all, we have this beautiful diagonal for a bishop here, which can be possibly reinforced by our queen if needed. And also notice that after sacrificing this pawn here on e4, it's pretty much blocking in this bishop and the queen. This battery is no longer effective, and it's also taking away a square from this knight, and if this knight can move, then it's even more difficult for this knight to move. So we're kind of sticking it to white, not giving him room to move. So let's see what happened in the game. Bishop f2, knight d7. It's heading for the beautiful blockading square on e5. Now white went knight to g1. He's intending knight f3 to try to counter the blockade on e5. Gligoric went queen to g5, bishop f1, knight e5. Now he went knight f3, queen e7, and he managed to exchange one piece here. But notice how black totally controls the board. This blockade is just totally making the white pieces bad, and it's very difficult to play the white position. White castled. Gligoric decided that his knight on h5 wasn't doing much and decided to bring it back. h3 was played, bishop d7, and now black is just getting ready to open up the queen set with a6 and b5, and then he can move his rook here and use the battery here of the queen and the bishop to make something decisive happen. Knight b1. This is actually another interesting moment. He wants to put the knight from d2 to f3, where it disturbs the blockade. But here Gligoric played a nice move, f3, another pawn sacrifice. White accepted, and now he went back to h5. where there's a new function for this knight blockade on f4 after 92, knight f4. And notice now that this knight no longer has these squares available, so it's basically bad, and this battery is still very bad. And after bishop f1 and b5, black is much better, but it should be added though that somehow Kotov managed to draw this game. Let's look at a similar example. This time we have Garry Kasparov with the black pieces. It's not exactly the same position, but the theme is the same. e4. White took on h5 first, and after f takes e4. Well, what do we do? You should know that it's obvious. Yes, we play f4. Bishop went to f2, bishop to g4. Probably with this move he's trying to induce white to play h3, which he indeed did, otherwise he can't long castle, and that means that this is an additional black squared weakness here. And black has a blockade here, making this bishop very bad, this bishop very strong. And black is ready to attack on the queen set. And indeed, see how this black bishop on e5 is by far the best piece on the board. And despite being down opponent, it's black that has all the chances, and of course Kasparov won this game. All his pieces are coming to life here. Bishop e5, b2 is threatened, and well, he didn't take the queen with the rook, he took it with the queen, and white finally resent because this is checkmate. A nice game by Kasparov. Okay, but now we come to an interesting game. Okay, a little bit of self-pluck. But this is a game I played myself, and it's sort of to demonstrate that okay, it's all well and good to know these patterns, but really they're no good unless we can somehow use them to help ourselves improve. And indeed, well, let's just go quickly over this. We got well, sort of a King's Indian, type of structure certainly, but the move order was a little bit different. And here I believe black has a fine position. Here my opponent played b4. And now I think I played a fine move, and in light of what we have been looking at, you should probably know what that move is. But anyway, you can take a minute to think about it. Well, of course, I played e4, the Gligoric pawn sack. I am blocking white's pieces, and indeed this black square blockade is very strong if you're intending to attack on the king set. White played f takes e4, f4. Bishop d4 was played, and I went knight to e5. You see that black has a very clear plan of attack with simply moves like this. The queen can come over when and if needed. This bishop will clear the way for this rook to join here. Perhaps this rook has doubled on the file then already, and somehow it will be difficult for white to stop the black attack. white played here bishop takes e5. That's probably a mini mistake because, well, this bishop is simply too strong. Now a further inaccuracy by my opponent. He played h3. And I followed up with f3. Not so much a pawn sacrifice because I will get the h3 pawn right away. And after rook takes, pawn takes, bishop takes a3. My pieces are totally coming to life, and he played here king h1. Notice that on f4, I probably just take it and play queen to g5. When I win this piece back and have the bishop pair. So king h1 was played. And I played queen to h4. Although this seems like a strong move, found by the computer afterwards, and if it takes, we will have a checkmate in a few moves. But queen h4 is logical, threatening all kinds of discovered checks. Rook g1 was played, king h8, queen e1, and after queen f6 my opponent simply resigned. Actually a pawn down, but he can't do anything to defend. A very nice game. Although I did have a nice way to finish here with bishop g2. He has to take, knight f4 check, and after knight takes f4 I play rook g8. White has only king f1 here, and then I capture on e1, and I win white queen, and pretty soon the rest of white's material, pretty much. But okay, this little game was pretty much meant to demonstrate that by learning these classic games and accumulating knowledge of patterns, someday, somehow, it will pay up. It will pay dividends, and indeed it did here. And well, we can wonder, would I have played e4 and won this nice game if I had not known about the game Code of Gleecourage and this sacrifice? Probably not, but we'll never know. But I'm guessing probably not. So, okay. What do we have next? We have a technique pattern which I call the self-moving rook with 2 pawns. And what is that? Yeah, let's save it. Well, this is a completely fabricated position by myself, but it's meant to demonstrate how these 2 passed pawns and this rook don't really need the help of the white king to push themselves, because it's this is a completely self-movable object, so to say. And the technique is really simple. First move, rook b4. We are guarding the a4 pawn. Black will make some move. We simply play b3. Our next move is rook b5. Then we play a5, b4. After that, b6 where the rook is guarded. And again we push the pawns. Boom, boom. What happens next? The rook goes up and the pawn comes. Boom, boom. And finally the rook goes here and the pawn is ready to promote. In this sample I made up, I tried to make some counterplay for black, but somehow there is none. a5, g5. Okay, we can play rook, sorry, b4 here, but why not rook b6 with check? and if a king moves, then b4. g4 trying to make counterplay, but after a6 black has to move the king, because if we go for instance g3 here, then we can break up our pattern, and we have this, which is completely winning. So after a6 the king has to move. We simply continue with our pattern. King perhaps tries to join. Okay, king c5. King c4 is not the most critical move, but okay. Rook b7. And the pawns are completely being pushed by themselves, and we can even allow this. And finish our pattern here with rook b8, and we are ready to make a new queen here. And there's no counterplay here, we simply bring our king here. And the white wins. Do we have anything more like that? Yes, we have technique pattern number 2. And that's the queen ending, with the queen pushing pawn and defending against checks perpetual. What do I mean here? I'm talking about the position like this, which is, I believe, quite common. We have a passed pawn more, and a queen ending, and we want to push it. Well, there shouldn't be any problem associated with that, but queen b8 check, king h7. Now we play f3. Notice that our queen is on the same diagonal as our king, and that's really important. We can demonstrate that by, after f5, making a silly move for white, queen to b7. What happens then is simply queen e5 check. If we go back, check. If we interpose, check. This is simply a perpetual. So this silly line demonstrates the importance of having the queen on the same diagonal as the king. Okay, f5 is an attempt at some counterplay by black, but if black sort of does nothing, then we simply push the pawn. And right here, it's important to play queen to c7, keeping the queen on the same diagonal as the king. And after this, black can do nothing to prevent the promotion of the pawn. If we, on the other hand, push the pawn, and I think this queen c7, don't push the pawn to b7. Go queen c7 and then b7. If you, however, push the pawn here, after queen c6, you have to be a little careful, because queen c6 throws the win away. Queen d6 check. What can we do if we go g3? Then we have perpetual on these two squares. And if you try this, well, nothing can be done. It's a perpetual. So have in mind this queen c7. So this technique is basically putting the queen on the same file as your pawn and on the same diagonal as your king. Push it to the 6th rank and use the queen, put on c7 and then push the pawn. Okay, let's look at a small attempt at counterplay by black. We push, queen d2, b5, f4, and now, because the queen is not putting pressure on b pawn, the black queen, we can play queen c7 and then finish up with b6, b7 and make a queen. All we have to look out for is some kind of counterplay here with a perpetual. But our idea is that when the queen moves away, we will take here. So, okay. Actually, maybe when looking at this, maybe there are small problems with a move like Queen F2. Well, not now, because that would take on F4. But when we push B6, Black can go Queen F2, threatening this perpetual. Okay, I'm not going to leave you hanging, so let's look at this. If we make this move, yeah, then we go Queen C5, completely winning. Yeah, because then this is a new diagonal of interest really, because this one is blocked now. So can Black really make a winning move here? Queen E3 maybe? And we have check. And if you can put the queen. Well, now we can make some checks and it's no problem. Yeah, okay. I'm seeing some ghosts. I mean, this is +9 for the computer. But basically, this is a good technique to know. And indeed, I have another example. When the king is on G2, on the H1 to 8 diagonal, all the same things.